All right, guys. Welcome to the very first episode of Friday Nights on the Bayou. I am rejoined by my former co-host at Gridiron Football, Jace Lejeune. We're going to do this weekly. We're going to talk about high school football across the state. We'll bring on guests, you name it, and as you know, it will be weekly. It might be twice a week, might be once a week. We'll have to figure it out, just given our schedules. But I'm glad that we are talking high school football again. It's been, I would say, a pretty slow 8-9 months in terms of high school
It
football, just
has.
because a lot of different stuff. Obviously I covered baseball and basketball for LSU, and obviously Jace is doing gridiron football all year long.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always football going on our end, Grant, but I think you're at the point where we're starting to really ramp up. So I guess it's really football season now because of how busy it really is this time of year. So excited about reunite and do this every week. So really looking forward to it, and it's gonna be really fun following what's going on around the state week in and week out.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, it was getting pretty boring covering 7-on-7s and going to these camps or whatever. For me, at least mine, now we get to see some guys, knock each other out on the football field, which is always pretty good. I'm a pretty traditionalist when it comes to football. I like when people hit each other. I
Oh
don't,
yeah.
I think 7-on-7's entertaining. It's always good to see guys competing at all these 7-on-7 tournaments, but you want
It's
to see them
something,
hit.
it's something, but it's
Right,
not the real deal. It's not the
right.
full deal. It's like getting an
Exactly.
appetizer, but you're not getting the full main course. So that's pretty much what it is. But we're glad that a couple weeks away from a bunch of scrimmages, and I think around the 24th, I think is when they start really ramping up with that with scrimmages and then jamborees and get into week one.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of changes.
Yeah.
A lot of changes since the last time we covered high school football. Of course, St. Thomas More Journalist Catholic or Select Division 1 now. Leesville is now Division 2 Select, I believe what it was. There's a lot. U High joining Division 2 Select Division 2. I mean, a lot of
Right.
changes. What was the most notable change that you noticed, and which one made the biggest impact?
Right. I mean, I know you mentioned that those are all really big moves, and we look at really those are some of the biggest ones. But how about LCA? Moving down too. I mean, that was a pretty noticeable one. Looking at it, and I feel like with some of those teams moving up from like Division 4, Division 3. I think when you look at like Division 4, the non-select side of things, I feel like that's probably the most wide open when it comes to Division 4 non-select because of some of those teams that moved up. So, but LCA is definitely one that moved down. That definitely stood out. But you already mentioned those with St. Thomas More, and I mean with U High, and I mean those are some big ones, and really it's unique with U High because it probably actually gives them a better chance, competing for like a state championship if you think about it. Even though it's still going to be pretty tough, but it might give them actually a better shot because of what the bracket they were in before. I mean, with Calvary Baptist and St. Charles Catholic, like it's brutal. So it actually probably helps them out a little bit. So that's definitely a noticeable one, just because of like it actually might actually help them, even though they are moving up.
Hmm. Yeah, and speaking of St. Charles Catholic, you mentioned that they're avoiding St. Charles Catholic. Actually, St. Charles Catholic will be joining right with them.
See,
Uh,
it's gonna be one of those things, Grant, where I'm still trying to figure out all these
yeah.
teams moving. It's ridiculous right now with how many teams are moving up, moving down, and with select and non-select, you throw an extra wrinkle into that. Like, yeah, it's going to take a lot of me getting used to with all the new districts and the reformatting going on.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that stood out to me the most, actually, obviously St. Thomas More was a big one, and Charles Catholic was a big one, as you mentioned. U High
Yeah,
was a big one, and also St. Charles Catholic, as I just mentioned, was a big one. But I think the one that stood out to me the most was basically all of Tangipahoa Parish moved to select.
yeah,
Kenwood is now Division 4 select, so
right,
Division 4
right,
select Division 4 will be even tougher with Southern Lab, Washington Christian,
hmm,
Riverside's returning a lot of players. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of very good teams in Division 4 Select, and I know a lot of people you kind of don't really pay attention to smaller schools. because they are smaller, of course. But the thing about the smaller schools is that they can still play competitive football, and that's a hell of a bracket to be in. If you really like to see chaos, that's the perfect bracket because there's really no separation between a lot of the teams.
Yeah, and you look at those brackets, Grant. Like it's going to come down. What's so unique about it is when one player goes. When you look at the smaller teams, the smaller brackets, that's two positions for you. It's not just okay. Like my running back goes down. No, your running back and your starting linebacker goes down. So it's two positions in one, which makes it impactful. So that when you look at that, when you look at the top players in that bracket, it's going to come down to the teams that are most in shape and most ready to roll when it comes to the teams that are mostly all in shape, by the time the end of the season hits. So when you throw a wrinkle on it, even though they're smaller teams, I mean, that division you just said, I mean, when you throw in Southern Lab, who's the defending state champion, 2-time defending state champion now. I mean, Washita Christian. I mean, Kentwood's going to be loaded this year. So, yeah, I mean, that's going to be definitely one of the more Riverside, one of the more intriguing brackets to really follow this year.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that also Tangible Hope Parish. Remember, Amite is also Tangible Hope Parish. They're moving to Select Division 3, which will, again, be still arguably might be the toughest one. Obviously Division, non-select Division 1 stuff, of course, Select Division 1 stuff as well. But it's right up there with them, with Amy joining, of course, even though they lose two terrific teams.
Right.
But then also Ponchatoula is also in Select Division 1 as well.
Yeah.
Ponchatoula, of course, they're trying to get back to where they were a couple of years ago, where they were one of the better programs in the state.
Right.
And of course, they got a lot of talent, but it's also about coming together and everything coming together and just you just get hot at the right time. But before we break off into a couple of things before we break off into our main stuff is that for one, I think for everyone kind of unfamiliar with the whole non-select thing. So non-select schools are usually schools that are zoned public schools that are not charter, magnet, or open enrollment. Some perfect examples would be Central, Zachary, Descheret, and Letcher. And then select is private schools and public schools. Private schools, of course, and then public schools that are charter, magnet, or open enrollment. And some perfect examples of that, at least obviously the private schools, Calvary Baptist, Brother Martin, Catholic of Baton Rouge, Archbishop Shaw, you name it. Some magnet schools, for example, for magnet schools would be Liberty, Scotlandville, Seabird, and then of course, and then also the Tangible Hollow Parish schools. Charter schools are basically all of New Orleans, so Warren Easton, Carr, 35, you name it. And then open enrollment, the perfect example will be all the Lafayette schools. The only exception is Southside, and that's because even though they're in part of the Lafayette Parish School District, they serve a specific area in Lafayette, so therefore they are non-select. But I just wanted to break that to you because it's still very confusing for a lot of people. But I think the easiest thing to remember for me is okay, New Orleans, select. If you're in the city of Baton Rouge, probably select. Lafayette, except for Southside, select. So I think that's the easiest way to break it down, and you got to figure everything else out. I'm sorry.
It makes a lot of sense because you get really the questions all the time. It's like, okay, why is this school, like Scotlandville, for example, why are they, pecked with the Catholic league teams and like Catholic High and Baton Rouge and teams like that, the private school teams? Well, that pretty much explains why. So people really need to understand that because it is confusing. We keep track of it. And, like we just mentioned before, it's tough to keep track of it because reclassifications every couple years, and then you add this. So, I mean, it's a lot to keep track of. So it's good that you get to really explain to people, distinguish what's really non-select and what is select, because a lot of people, complain about it for obvious reasons. I think that's a topic for another show. But really, this is good for people to really distinguish between the two.
Yeah, of course. And I remember, I mentioned a couple of things. The second thing I also want to mention too, of course, if you guys haven't heard, but I'm pretty sure everyone kind of knows by now, is Ed Daniels, who of course is a friend of mine, a colleague of both of us, and also a mentor to me. He's in the hospital right now. He's had a really bad health scare in California when he was covering the Saints. Of course, it was a good thing that Brian Kelly mentioned that. I think that
I
was
was going to say that was
that
classic
was awesome.
Brian Kelly.
Yeah,
Mentioned that.
because he's a big figure not only in the state of New Orleans but the state as a whole. And he's growing up in New Orleans. The show came on usually around 11 o'clock, midnight, and they would have highlights of all the high school games in New Orleans. And he was one of the very first people to do that in the state. So he's very influential, not only across the state, but also of how I cover high school football, because he taught me that regardless of the program, there's always a story there. And I wanted to mention that before we cover everything else.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a legend. He's a legend of what we do. I can remember, going to. Now I don't live in New Orleans, not around it as much as you are, but I can remember going to the Superdome with my dad. Staying in the hotel after like the games are over in the Superdome, and going back and watching Ed and watching JT together breaking down the games. And that was one of the reasons why I decided to get into this. Seeing him and seeing JT break down games at the end of every state championship game. I thought that was really cool. And as far as coverage, Ed's really top notch. He's professional. He does everything professionally. And really, my thoughts and prayers go out to Ed and his family. And my prayers are with him at this time. And we're looking forward to hopefully seeing Ed back with us and and cover some more football by the season's end. So hopefully, I know God's with him, and we'll keep him definitely in our prayers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, man. Let's do this. So first things first, let's talk about some of the returning teams. Some of the better teams across the state, just more what we consider our state title contenders. First, let's start with the big schools. Of course, the obvious ones are Catholic, Baton Rouge,
Right.
St. Thomas More is coming back, Carr, of course,
Yeah.
coming back. Justran's really good. So, Jace, what are some of your top big schools that you expect to be contending for state title this year?
As far as the big schools, I'm looking at Ruston, really, and they're going to really test themselves. You saw the schedule that Coach Ball really put out. They're not only taking on some of the best non-district in Louisiana, but they're going out of state. They're playing against some of the best in the country, and they're really going to prove themselves. And that's what you want. You're the state champions. You're coming in. Everybody's going to want to throw their best at you. And I think it's smart for Coach Ball by making that schedule, because you're testing the waters against some of the best in the country, and that should help you get prepared for. They play in a very tough district, and that's going to get them prepared as well. But I really like what they got. Really defensively, I know they lost some defensive pieces last year, but Aiden Anning, having him come back as well, and Zarek Hill, those are really guys you can really lean on defensively. And how about that backfield? We got Josh Brantley coming back, who was a guy that we don't really mention a lot, coming back, even though that he won a state championship last year. At the quarterback position, and you have him and Jordan Hayes, who I feel like he's been there for like a decade. It almost seems like. So I feel like they're actually more balanced this year as a team, offensively and defensively, than last year. And they got some, as Grant, they got some stud receivers to throw the football too. A lot of guys LSU is even looking at. So yeah, Ruston for me, as far as like the top, very top, coming in as the state champions now, can they go ahead and repeat? That's going to be the biggest question, because this is their first state championship they've won since 1990. So can they go and do it again? That's going to be the biggest thing going into the season. But I really like Ruston, and I really like Ed Carr. I think it's time for Ed Carr to win a state championship in 5A. And you and I saw them in the spring, and I was just looking at their second and third team. I'm like, man, it's just going. Like, it doesn't stop. Their third team can compete with pretty much anybody around the state. So I like their weapons offensively. I like John Johnson too. I feel like he's a really good quarterback. Definitely. I feel like he's one of the best they've really had in the car. And you throw in Manchild, throwing him the football. When you throw a football to a guy named Manchild, that should pretty much tell you about him. And Oliver Mitchell, Brian Sanchez, defensively, I mean, Corey Adams, Richard Anderson on the defensive line. I don't know if you want to block those two guys up front.
Yeah.
All at safety. So I feel like they're a complete team, really, from all the way around. And I mean, we're going to talk more about the Catholic League later on, but I feel like those are my two top teams heading into the season.
Yeah, of course. And, I like how you mentioned John Johnson. I thought he's really improved because he's throwing the tighter windows. He seems a lot more confident in the pocket, and he's making all the right throws. And I was really impressed with him not only in the scrimmage against Chachere, but I saw him a few 7-on-7 tournaments as well. He's looked just fantastic, of course. Like you mentioned, Rustin. The big thing about Rustin is their health. Obviously, they're playing on a lot of big-time programs from the state of Texas. One of them being Longview, which Longview is a pretty big brand in the state of Texas. And also, I think they're playing Lee High School in Midland, Texas. I think they're. I know they're playing one.
I know they're going to Midland. It might be playing Midland Legacy or one of those teams, but I know they're going over there too.
Yeah, and I believe they're playing 4 teams from the state of Texas. So I mean, they're gonna. I mean, the big thing about them is health, of course. I mean, Division I non-select is no cakewalk. As mentioned before, I think we mentioned this in some of our past things we've talked about. One of our passages, we talked about how North Shore beat West Monroe and how big of a shock that was. I mean, North Shore was a 5-5 team coming in, and West Monroe was seen as a team that was contending for a state championship, and North Shore knocked them off in the first round, which is arguably the biggest upset in the playoffs that year. I mean, you can make a case that was the biggest one, if not one. And definitely one of. But it might be the biggest. So, I mean, that's not an easy cakewalk. So, health is very big for them. But for a couple of my picks for big schools, as I've mentioned before, Desherhan. I really love Desherhan. I believe that they have the top receiving core in the state with Philip Wright, who's now coming to Michigan, who's LSU is still gunning for. LSU is still making him a top priority, even though he's coming to Michigan. You also have Jabari Mack, who's one of the top receivers for the class of 2026. Johnny Teal, who's committed to La Tech, he's a very good receiver. And then Greg Wilford. Greg Wilford is also underrated receiver as well, and I think he has a chance to become one of the top receivers for the class of 2026. Also, you have to mention the quarterback, Jackson Fields, who's a fantastic quarterback as well. He was the leader in a large amount of passing categories in the New Orleans metro area. I think he led the city in passing yards, completion percentage, touchdowns, you name it. He was a very dynamic quarterback for this Chachere team last year, and I expect him to be even more dynamic this year with a year of experience already on his belt. Another
fun to watch.
Yeah. Also, the defense, I think, is going to be very fantastic, led by, of course, LSU commit Jace Thomas, who was very impressive in the spring game against Carr. And he really showed that he is one of the best safeties, not only in the state of Louisiana, but also the country. And another team I want to mention, too, is Archbishop Shaw. I really love what
Michigan South, I think, is what they're going to call it.
Yeah, Michigan South. So, South Ann Arbor.
South Ann Arbor, yep.
Yeah, so but I also want to mention Shaw, of course. Shaw, a couple of years ago, Hank Tierney came back and too much fanfare. I really love what the school and the community have done to help rebuild this Shaw football program that has been dormant for quite some time. Remember, they were one of the top. Obviously, even when we were alive, they were still going to the state championship. Going to the state championship almost every year. It's been about 15 years, I think, since the last time they've been in the state title game. And as I mentioned, last year was the first time since that they'd gone to back-to-back quarterfinals. I mean, that's how long ago it's been since Shaw was seen as one of those teams. Now with St. Thomas More leaving and so Turling's leaving, they have an excellent chance of going to the state championship for the first time since 2008, and they have the team to do it with Jasper Parker running back, of course Jacob Washington receiver. They're both coming to Michigan, while we call it Ann Arbor South, and then also Mason Wilson, I think, is one of the top two other quarterbacks in the state. It's one like you definitely don't want him running the ball, but he's also a dangerous passer as well.
That's another guy nobody talks about as much. Yeah.
And I think, I'm not sure if he will be a quarterback by the next level, but I think whoever gets him will figure out a way to get the ball in his hand because he's a very special player. But then also their defense is very good as well. Brontre Carter is one of the best. I think he's one of the biggest sleepers in the New Orleans area, and I think he'll be a hot commodity next in the next recruiting cycle as he's a class of 2026 guy. Other than also want to mention that Shaw, of course, will be in the same district as St. Charles Catholic and Belle Chase.
Yeah.
And both the teams we're going to mention later on the show for a different topic. But that's a very intriguing district, and I think that district will help prepare them for the playoffs. But then also their very first game of the year, of course, as you just mentioned, was Carr, and that will be one of the biggest games of the year in the city. Of course, two very talented teams going at it. So I'm very excited for that first weekend of the year, and also mentioned in district hand will also have a big game as well against Catholic, and Catholic will be traveling down there. So it'll be two of the best programs in the state in the last 10 to 15 years going at it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. There's gonna be a lot of fun matchups this year, and a lot of teams that don't normally play each other, non-district wise, and it's gonna be fun. Especially, I know Catholic West Monroe is a big game, but I mean, there's definitely a lot of big games throughout the entire state. And we just did a media day preview on Alexandria, and Alexandria's their schedule is freaking tough. I mean, from the very beginning from their fall scrimmage to about to the end of the season. I mean, it's nonstop. So we have a lot of intriguing matchups throughout the course of the state, and it's going to be fun to follow.
Yeah, and also I mentioned Roger Carr. Roger Carr, I want to correct myself. Roger Carr is a sophomore, so he'd be a class of 2070 guy. But the guy I really wanted to mention too is Sheldon Green, who I think is one of the biggest sleepers in the state. He's an edge rusher, 6'3", 225, and I think he will be poised for a big year this year. Jace, is there any other teams you want to talk about that we probably haven't mentioned yet?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Baton Rouge area, I mean, we mentioned them a little bit earlier as U High, and just because of the last 2 years, right? They were like this close going to the state championship. I think they really lost on the last play. I think the last 2 years.
Overtime, yeah. They also in overtime last year.
Yep. So when they lost to St. Charles Catholic, but I feel like with this team and visiting with them, they may have the best offensive line in the state. I mean, if you think about it, just from across the board. I mean, I know Lamar Brown is one that headlines that group, but they got all state guys across the board, and they could be one of the best, if not the best, O-line in the state. I mean, Emil Pecorello is one of the best quarterbacks in the state. You have him coming back for a whole year. I mean, Keelan Moses. I mean, one of the football players. Just put football player on him. He's one of the best football players out there, and he's got a lot of weapons. I mean, a couple of different running backs. Talked to coach, and I mean, he really likes the running backs they got. And then there's Zay Martin at wide receiver. I mean, you got Trishon Bush at tight end. I mean, they have weapons out there, and it's going to be really fun seeing them this year. And I think they have a chip on their shoulder. I really do, just because of what happened in the last couple of years, and this is going to be a fun team to follow. And talk about the move, that could actually help them in the long run and going for a state championship. So you got them, and then I'm sure you want to talk about some maybe a small team or two that you'll talk about. But I mean, obviously, I think the top small team, I guess you'd say small team, but I mean Calvary. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, just they probably upgraded their roster and their team this offseason, just with Devin Harper coming in on the offensive line. And you have Aiden Wardell coming back at quarterback, you have James Simon coming back at running back, and they do return some defensive pieces as well. So this team's going to score a lot of points. We know that, and their defense is going to be good enough. So they're actually, which is scary how dominant they were at times last year, they can probably be even better this year, which is really saying a lot. So I feel like Calvary, and this is before really seeing. Obviously, we haven't seen the scrimmages and and jamborees and stuff like that. But just from right now, I mean, you have to go off of that as far as like some of the top teams going into the year.
Yeah, and I think as you mentioned, Cowboys are actually one of my favorite teams to cover. I mean, I'm glad you kind of mentioned them because I think I talk about them a little bit too much, but I don't think Calvary minds if you talk about them a lot because I always have high praises for Coach Green and his staff, and of
Yeah.
course Abram Wardell, who I think is actually one of the biggest sleepers in the state at quarterback. I always feel like if he was just 6'2", 6'3", he would have a lot more offers.
Yeah.
But then also James Simon, of course, Devin Bishop, of course, transfer. Devin Harper
Right.
transferred there during the offseason. That kind of sent shockwaves across the state because he was a top-notch offensive lineman for Captain Shoup last year, and I think what helped facilitate that move was Coach Adam Kirby, taking a job in Arkansas, and so I think that helped facilitate that move even more. Also, want to mention some big schools as well. Of course, Jace. I'm surprised Jason didn't mention him because he's very high on him. Opelousas, Cecilia, they're both bringing back a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Of course, Opelousas has one of the top running backs in the state with Deshaun Ford, and of course they have Corey Amos as well. A lot of great players on Opelousas. Respectfully,
back. Yep.
Yes, Cecilia's bringing back Diesel Solari. Definitely one.
He's one of the more best players coming back. High school players coming back. He's one of the best.
Oh yeah, definitely. And of course, you got Brent Gordon Jr., who's a fantastic player as well. I think he's going to be he's one of the biggest sleepers in the state, and they have a lot of great players.
A good player for him. Frankie Frank's a good player for him. Yeah, they got some guys. So I mean, that's going to be. Would not surprise me if they match a couple more times again this year.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. Yeah, exactly. Both games were fantastic. Of course, they had a regular season game that went down the wire. That I think Cecilia came back. I think they came back from like 2 touchdowns to win the game. And of course, the Opelousas versus Cecilia was a great. The situation was a great game. The Opelousas kind of broke away very late. In that game.
They used their size, and that was the difference, up front, and Deshaun Ford kind of wearing them down. That was very much what paid dividends in that game.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, that was what a performance from both teams. And, yeah, let's moving on to actually, I want to mention, too, Lutcher, because I want to mention Lutcher because Lutcher's bringing back a lot of players, including Rashad Sterling, and also their whole entire offense. Coach Jacobs does a great job with that program. North DeSoto as well, and there's a lot of great teams. I think
there's a lot of great teams out there. Trust me.
We're gonna get to those eventually. It may not be this episode, but it's definitely going to be future episodes because we're gonna have a lot to talk about. We're gonna probably do a region by region right before the seasons. That way, we can break down each team.
Yep. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because otherwise, we'll be on this one topic for about an hour and a half. Yeah,
it'll be hours until we're done.
But let's move on to the.
Don't get offended if you're a fan out there. We don't mention your team. There's just a lot of really good talent out there in Louisiana.
Yeah, exactly. And moving on to the small schools. Of course, Jace already mentioned Calvary, who of course is a favorite to repeat SSD champions. As not only do they return a lot of people, they also just reloaded. And also another player you forgot to mention was a guy Caleb Tucker who came in from Huntington. I'm not sure.
if you mentioned from Huntington, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very good player as well. But speaking of small schools, what are some other schools outside Calvary that you're really intrigued by?
Yeah, there's some teams out there that I just really like. Talking from the small school end of things. I really like. There were 2A, but I know they made the move and everything. But teams like in Tangipahoa, I know you talked about earlier, with Amy and Kentwood, and I saw Amy in their spring game, and man, they can throw it. They just went back and threw it just go routes. 6 or 7 times. Every time they did that, it went for touchdowns. They can really throw the football. They got a left tackle that he's going to be an SEC guy the next couple of years. He's basically a baby. He's only going to his sophomore year, but he's about 6'5", 330 pounds. And Coach Powell was raving about this kid as far as the next big thing. So Kentwood's got a lot of great players now. They have a new coach, even though he's been on the staff. He's been the offensive coordinator the last couple of years under Coach Foster. But They got a lot of talent, and Kenwood's always got speed, and they're going to be right in the thick of it. A team that's going to be like a sleeper team, and a lot of people are talking about is White Castle. White Castle, just because of a lot of the teams moving up from that non-select Division 4. I mean, that's pretty much wide open. I mean, nobody really knows who's going to really be the favorite there. And White Castle could be that team. I saw them in the spring, and they matched up well against Scoutenville, who's a 5A school, and they match up really well against them. They got a wide receiver name, a name to really think about is Shadrick Allen. He's a wide receiver. He scored 5 touchdowns in that spring game, and they just threw it to him, just some bubbles and some screens, and he made guys miss and made them look foolish. So White Castle's definitely a team that you're talking about the small school in, and not a lot of people are talking about. I feel like that's definitely a sleeper team to talk about.
Oh yeah, definitely. And some of my favorites for the small schools. That we're talking about Division 3, Division 4 schools.
Right.
Thank you for forgetting I mentioned that too. That's what we kind of determine. Big schools to me are Division 1, Division 2. Small schools are Division 3, Division 4. But from there's a couple of schools I have in mind. The first one, of course, is St. James. St. James could be a very young team this year, but I've been impressed with their players at some of the 7 tournaments. I mean, these guys are mostly sophomores, juniors,
really young
with
team,
with some freshmen thrown in there as well. So I've been really impressed with them. Coach Davis has really coached these guys up to play to their best potential. I really love some of the players they have on the team, including Chicaz Villanueva, and also the quarterback Payne Clement, who goes by Swaggy P.
You look at him, got the long hair flowing.
And he's
like Trevor Lawrence.
But I like him a lot. And when you look at him, you're like, okay, how old is this guy? Because he's really young looking, but he's a very impressive quarterback. He's not really phased about what's getting thrown at him, and I'll be very intrigued to watch the St. James team moving forward as we get into full pads and they start competing against some of the best teams in the state, and they will have some of the top games in the state early on. So it'd be very
a motivation grant for them last year. I mean, they lost the state championship on a 2-point conversion, so that's still a big motivating factor for them.
That's the funniest thing about that game is like if St. James, like let's say Union Parish to score very late in that game, and St. James would have won. That would have been perfect. I would have had a perfect record for the state championship games that week. But things have to happen. Coach Spadafora trusted his team and trusted his team to make that play in that moment. And it was pretty gutsy to run the ball very late in the game because I believe they didn't have any timeouts. But a great game between two great teams, two great coaches.
By far the best game. By far the best game.
Definitely. Probably the best finish. Yeah, definitely. If not the best game, definitely the best finish of all the games.
Right.
But I'm really intrigued by St. James, of course, which you mentioned, Union Parish. They're Division 3, so that counts small school. They're another, even though they lose, I think they lose a few players, but they'll still be very good. I mean, they've been to the state championship game 4 years straight and won last year.
And nobody thought after losing Trey Holly that they would win a state championship last year, and
exactly
that's what happened. They won state. So I think they love being the underdogs, and I think that's kind of the whole thing with Coach Spadafora, like us against the world type of mentality. So I think he loves that. I think it's going to benefit.
Yeah, and I believe, if I remember correctly, I think they're in the same district as Union, not Union Parish, Calvary. Let me actually double check that real quick because I remember
they used to be in the same district with Sterlington for a long time, and that was a big
So they're in the same division as Calvary, so that'll be a very interesting match between those two teams, and also homers in there as well. So that's a very that's a very good district. And that's what I'm saying. Like that's another really good team right there that we should have mentioned. I mean, that's saying there's a lot of great teams, so we might forget some. There's a couple. Now we're still riding with the river parishes. Riverside's another great team as well. They're bringing a lot back. Dietrich Lasty, of course,
he's fun to watch.
He's one of my favorite players to watch. He's coming back. The quarterback's coming back.
A good
bit of the Yeah, good bit of their line is coming back. Who else is all coming back? Kendrick Johnson, Kendrick Boogie Johnson.
Yeah.
Guess what?
Ninth
He's
grade.
only a freshman. He's only a freshman because remember he
Yeah.
starts as an eighth grader. So
Yeah, he was
and
an
he
eighth
got
grader.
and he got bigger too. I think now he's like about 5'10".
Yeah, because he was going to play in the junior high bowl game for us, and then they had a predicament that happened that came up. But yeah, I
right.
know he's going to his ninth grade year.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, and then also, Riverside, I think it's gonna be a favorite to go back to the Dome this year. I mean, they bring back a lot of players, but also sticking with the New Orleans area, you also have Newman. Newman, believe it or
Yep.
not, and I'm pretty sure they're tired of hearing this every year, year in and year out. But they're surprised with all the talent that they've produced. It's surprising that they have not been to a state title game in their history. I think this is the year they're going to do it. I really believe that. I mean, if you look at who they bring back Eli Friend. You have Brett Bordelon come back. They have a very big offensive line.
Oh,
Huge offensive line, and that's really you really don't see those types of lines of Newman. They have a huge offense. I believe 4 of their 5 offensive linemen are 6'2" or older.
Yeah.
Like that's a big offensive line. Jake
Will
Randall's
brothers are good. Yeah, Will Randall's brothers are really good running back.
Yeah, and they're gonna bring back you're bringing back a lot of players. And Coach Nelson Stewart has been doing this for a very long time. He's been the head coach for the Greenies, I believe. It's getting close to 20 years with him being the head coach of the Greenies. And I know it would mean a lot to him to get this program to the state title game as he's an alum. And he's like his whole entire life he's basically been out of school. So I'm really cheering for them to make it to the state title game. I believe they have the team to do it. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. I thought they had a great shot last year.
Yeah, this is the most physical team after seeing them last year. They shut down Harlem Berry, and they are very physical with him in a scrimmage, in a jamboree before the start of the season. And they're physical. And I got to see them a little bit when they played a Episcopal in the playoffs. So they are physical, and I think that's what not a lot of people think about with Newman, right? They think about the high flying passing attack and being a finesse team. Well, this is not it. They are ground and pound. They want to beat you up. Like, this is a physical team, and I think with that mindset, I think that could be the difference in getting them over that hump, that semifinal hump, which is been kind of elusive for them the last couple of years.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then also one more team I want to mention, of course, is Washington Christian. Washington Christian, of course, they lost a good bit of their players, but their culture is so. I'm quoting the Redskins, not the Redskins, the Commanders GM at the time. I believe it was George Allen or what? One of it's what I'm talking about. The culture is damn good. It happened a few years ago. It's like the culture is damn good. And that's what I describe Washington Christian, of course. Washington Christian, they may lose the players, but they're always going to reload. They're bringing back the quarterback, Luke Vedrine. I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. And if I'm wrong, please correct me in the chat or let me know if you guys are watching. But then also they have a lot of players who, even though they may have not started last year, they've gained some experience. And I believe that Coach Fitzhugh will get these boys right. I believe they're once again, I think they'll contend for a state title. And they're the Washington Christian. The school, of course, I believe they have won. I think it was like 6 or 7 state titles. It's like 2000. Yeah, they've won a lot. And of course, they've won a lot in the last decade. So, I believe they're going to be back in the state title game for sure. They have a hell of a chance to do it. Before we move on, I want to mention some other teams as well. Haynesville is another team that's coming back, and I think they'll be another contender for a state title game. Of course, it didn't really end well for them last year. I mean, all you guys do is look at the score and their state title game matchup. It was, and I know, you don't want to lose in that fashion in that type of game. But that team was a pretty young team, a relatively young team. And they went up against a veteran Oak Grove team. And I think, with Oak Grove now leaving and that team being more experienced, I truly feel like that Coach Franklin will get these boys right once again, help prepare them for another chance to win a state title. They're the winningest program in Louisiana football history. They've won the second most state championships with, I believe, 17 or 18, which is below Curtis, of course, and they've won like 28. But I truly believe they will get Coach Frank will get it right. Neville's another team to watch out for, of course. Neville's bringing a lot back, and they kind of ended the season not in the best of terms as they got upset by Central in the second round. But they returned a lot of key pieces from last year, including their whole defense. And Mike Collins is now taking over as the head coach. He was the defense coordinator of one of the best defenses in the state. But they'll have a tough road to get there because now they're rejoining their district and rejoining their longtime rivals, Ruston and West Monroe, in a rugged 5A to a 2-5A district. That's a very tough district. Mandeville, also want to mention Mandeville, who's another great team as well. I think they have a hell of a shot to make it the state championship as they bring back a lot of players. Oh yeah, and then I also want to mention St. Paul's. Jace will talk a little bit more about them as we get later in the show. But St. Paul's is another team to watch out for. And it's not so much that I think they're going to win a state championship. I think they are definitely a state title contender this year, given the team they have. If their offense can really start clicking, I truly believe that they can find a way in the state championship. But let's move on to our next topic, which is which team you think is going to repeat as state champions. Of course, there's 8 state champions: Oak Grove, Calvary Baptist, Catholic Baton Rouge, Union Parish, Riverside. Who else am I missing? Opelousas.
Union Parish.
I already mentioned Union Parish.
Yeah.
There's 8 teams.
Yeah, Ruston.
Yep, Ruston. And then Ruston, and I feel like I'm forgetting another team.
St. Thomas More.
St. Thomas More. There's 8, yeah. I should have had that in front of me, but I thought I could impress all y'all by remembering by heart. but thank you. But that's why we have a coach. That's why I have my lucky coach, Jace the Turn. But yeah, of those 8 teams, which school do you think has the best chance of winning?
I think just because they're just so used to doing it, I'm gonna go with Oak Grove because they've won 4 of the last 5 state championships.
The last 4, something crazy. They've won a lot.
Something crazy like that. So they won a lot of state championships. They're just used to winning over there. You return your backfield. You get Jackson Bradley, who's one of the top quarterbacks in the state. You get Jay Freeman back. And then really, if you look back in that state championship game, I know it was opportunities for a lot of mop-up duty because they were up on Haynesville so much. Some of the guys that had freshmen and sophomores coming in, they're going to be nasty for them in the next couple of years. So I feel like Oak Grove, I know the other team that you're going to talk about, and that's definitely a really good option. But Oak Grove, just because of their pedigree and what they've been able to do the last couple of years, is they've just won. And not only in football, but they've been in baseball. They've been competing for state championships year in, year out. Coach Gregory does a great job with these guys, and it's just like another game to them. It's just something that they prepare for. And when you return a guy like Jackson Bradley, a guy who can throw it and run it, one of the top quarterbacks in the state, and a guy that's used to winning, Oak Grove has a really strong chance, in my opinion, to contend for 5 and 6 years, something crazy like that. But they can definitely be a team that can repeat.
Yeah, definitely. The thing about Oak Grove is, of course, they're moving to Division III non-select, and that's no cakewalk. I think it's a little bit tougher than the division they were in, because you have St. James, you have Union Parish, there's I think the teams in that division are just a little bit better than the ones they were having, but I think they do have the team to repeat. Although I think they may not. They're definitely. I think they're of one of 4 teams. I think are going to compete for a state title, of course. But my pick is a team we already mentioned, which is Calvary Baptist. I think Calvary Baptist has the best chance of doing it, even though they probably arguably in the toughest division of the 8 divisions. They probably have the one of, if not the toughest
Brackets.
divisions. Yeah, playoff brackets. I mean, you got Newman, you got LCA, a lot of great programs. So yes, it would be difficult, but when you bring back when you bring back Abram Mordello, you bring back a guy who's committed to play football at the for Texas, and Jace Simon. You have one of the best receiving corps in the state, and then also your offensive line was already pretty good, but then you also just reloaded and then you brought in Devin Harper, who's LSU commit. And the defense is just has a lot of great players who are now the secondary is young. I know that for a fact from talking to Coach Queen. But they're talented, and they will be very, very good in the near future. And they might do it. They might be very good as the season goes on. So I think I think they have the best chance of all the teams to repeat because of course St. Thomas More is moving up. They'll be Division One select Division One, and then you also have in the Catholic, of course, is in Division select Division One. So they're going to be and they're losing the quarterback, even though they bring back a lot of talent. They're still losing the quarterback. That's a much bigger deal than a lot of people think. And I think that there's just I just so that because of that, I really feel like that they have the best chance to repeat.
Some Labs has a chance, but they're playing in a very tough bracket too. And
they lost some players too. Remember, Chad Jones Jr.
quarterback, Marlon.
But the quarterback they're bringing in is really good. But
Jerry's really good, but still,
they lost a lot of their key players from last year. Then also, you remember Chad Jones Jr. transferred to St. Aug.
Yep, he transferred to St. Aug. So
it's still going to be a very. So they're in a tough. I think their division's just got even tougher just because of the teams.
And that's why they picked Southern Lab. I mean, for people that we're talking about them. But I think right now, looking at it, I think the two teams that we talked about, I think they're 1A and 1B right now. Not saying that the other teams can go and they can't do it because that's still a lot of capable teams that wouldn't shock me that they were PS state champions, but it's so hard to do, and you just have that target on your back to go and try and do that again. And like you said, with all the teams moving up and down and reclassification year, it's going to be it's going to be good because it's going to create some unique matchups we've never really seen. So that's what's going to be good about it.
And also want to mention Division 3 non-select. I got the list here. So Oak Grove would have to. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to play all these games in the playoffs, of course. I mean, obviously teams are going to lose, and also teams may be on the other side of the bracket. But here's some of the teams that they have to play against: Sterlington, St. James, Manny, Union Parish, Gina. I think Gina's bringing back a lot of players from last year. Bogalusa is another talented team. So, I mean, Boyles is also pretty good. I mean, so there's a good bit of teams in Division 3 non-select. So, I mean, and it's a little bit tougher than Division 4 because, I mean, Division 4, they have great teams. I mean, Haynesville is a very good program. Homer is a very good program. And, Walsh is a very good program, and not to take anything away from those programs.
Right,
all those programs are really good, but I mean, Sterlington, St. James, Manning.
That's definitely an upgrade.
That's a tough road. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
because you're eventually going to play the season playoffs.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough road, but crazy things have happened, and we're going to see. We're going to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, but then also when you have a guy like Jackson Bradley who can not only throw the ball pretty deep, but also he's just a winner. Guy on the field. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's just a winner.
The winner,
And you can't argue with that a lot of times. So
I think they have a great shot. But I just think it's a little bit tougher, which is why I'm leaning towards Calvary because now they have much better teams than probably the teams that Oak Grove State's and all the teams are bringing back players. But I think Calvary Baptist School, when you just bring back everybody and like a good bit of your team's going D1, like I'm leaning towards Calvary. Because they've done, they know the expectations because they've already done it. Now they bring back the same expectations.
That's a team I could easily see, and a team I could have easily picked too. And they're used to playing up in class. I mean, you look at they've scheduled Division 1 teams. They play Westgate And they played Captain Tree last year. I mean, really the doors down when they played them last year. So they're used to playing bigger teams. So like I don't think that's going to really help them as much. With moving and everything. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, there's some teams. I mean, I can see Southern Lab doing it. I can see them doing that. You look at St. Thomas more, I can easily see them try to go back and repeat. So there's more teams out there that can and do it, but it's just really hard. I mean, I feel like the competition around the state of Louisiana from top to bottom, and there's a lot of teams we haven't talked about, but I feel like the competition just is getting better and deeper, every year. So it's going to be a fun road, and I feel like this year it's going to be up and down. There's going to be a lot of teams that a lot more teams that can play out for it than usual.
Yeah, and I know this is a really long show, guys, so bear with us.
We like to
Uh,
talk, so
yeah, this is we're talkers. I mean, I don't think every show will be very long like this, but I just want to let you guys know, in case you guys are still watching. Um, this show, yeah, of course, you guys are watching this live, um, but then also you guys can go back and watch, and I'll put some timestamps down of where we talk, and just in case if you're afraid, if you want to log off, you want to come back to it later, we'll leave the timestamps of things we'll talk about as well, so you can get my timestamp and test it depending on what you want to listen to. But anyway, but if you guys want to stay on, that's fine too. But moving on, um, there's, as we mentioned, there's a lot of great teams, this year, and we can't get to them all. But what are some sleeper teams that you think people need to watch for? Of course, you already mentioned White Castle.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but what are some of the other teams that White Castle and Kenwood? But what are some other teams
right.
that you think people are kind of sleeping on a little bit?
I mean, you mentioned them earlier. I really like St. Paul's. I mean, St. Paul's came to our camp in Covington, and really, I mean, I like their quarterback, Brendan Kahn. I mean, I really like him. He's going to be a
Yep.
really good one. And he's got some weapons. I mean, Stone Celestine's a wide receiver. They have a really good rapport and chemistry with each other. They're linebackers. I mean, Kale Daigle's a really good one. So, I mean, I feel like and they're going to be well coached. I mean, Coach Sears really puts them in really good positions. And a lot of times they've really stood up to, tougher teams or teams with more talent in the past and in the playoffs and went wire to wire. I mean, they brought Catholic High and other teams in Division One select. I mean, down to the wire. And I feel like this is one of the more talented teams in a while. So I feel like that's going to be a sleeper team. I really like Alexandria. I mean, when you look at Alexandria, they got a lot of guys. Offensively, they should be really good. I mean, JT Lindsay, you got him. They have a veteran offensive line. They returned 3 of their 5 starters, so they're going to be pretty good up front. And then, JT obviously is going to have a lot of big season. I mean, he ran for 1,700, 26 touchdowns last year. LSU commit. And then they got some good receivers to throw the football to. Jimmy Duncan, got Darius Washington. Their offense will be just fine. The question is, can their defense keep up? And they play a brutal schedule. I mean, it's probably one of the most brutal schedules out there in the state, and that's probably why I didn't put them up there as far as the state title contender because of the schedule that they play. And it starts, I think, a KDN as a scrimmage, and then they play St. Thomas more in Jamboree, and like that's before the season even starts.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a brutal schedule out there for them. But there's some pretty good teams out there. I mean, as far as sleeper teams are concerned, a lot of them that you've already mentioned. I know you're going to mention a couple of them on your list that we talked about. I mean, Dutchtown's like there's going to be sleeper teams out there. Like Dutchtown had a great season last year. There's going to be teams that have runs. Central had a Cinderella run pretty much last year, so that's going to be a team that you're going to talk about. But there's a lot of really good teams out there as far as sleeper teams are concerned, and it's going to be fun to follow. I mean, Dunham is going to be a sleeper team too, just because of the weapons they have, and Elijah Haven comes back, so they're going to be fun to watch. I like Live Oak, but Live Oak, I feel like they're kind of young, but their talent in the next couple of years, they're going to be a team that makes a lot of noise and gets a lot of headway. So they're going to be a fun team to watch too with some of the weapons I saw in the spring. They're going to be really good. So there's teams out there. I mean, kind of all around. Warren Easton is, even though you won't really say they're a sleeper team, but I mean, with really the guys that they have, the offensive line, they have a running game that they're always going to have a strong running game. So the quarterback, I think he's made some strides in the spring. So Warren East is going to have the athletes. So there's a lot of teams out there. I mean, it's just so much you can say sleeper teams out there. Those are just a couple of them, but there are some good teams. I think Bunky's a really good team that nobody's really talking about. They returned Kyle Johnson. They returned Dylan Compton. Most of the teams that they return are seniors. So they came to our media day, and they're really confident this year. And they went 9-1 last year. So I feel like that they can, with all those guys coming back. I know they lost to Gina, and then they lost in the playoffs. But Bunky is a team that's a veteran team. They got talent and can make a deep run too. So that's another team. So, I mean, you just kind of look around the state. I mean, Airline, we're going to talk about them a little bit more in the show because of their offense and how many points they can score. But, I mean, there's a lot of teams out there. I know you'll talk about some, but, I mean, that just comes to show you of how deep really this state is in talent. I mean, you say it every year. I mean, most players per capita when it comes to producing NFL players, and you see why with a lot of the programs that are out there.
Yeah, of course. I know you mentioned Dunham's sleeper team. I really don't. That's another team. As we mentioned, we can't get to a lot of teams. Dunham was one of them. I think they're a legit state title contender with Elijah Haven. And, of course, Jerome Harris Jr., J.J. Harris. As it's a good JJ. He's a very fantastic running back. I think that, I know that the state championships, they like to bring their votes in early, usually like at the end of the third quarter. But let's say they waited till like 2 minutes left to go in the game. J.J. Harris probably would have been the MVP. So Southern Lab had one of the better running back duels with him and Mario Nasbury.
Yeah.
Now he wanted to be the main guy, so he transferred to Dunham, and they also have some other running backs as well that are very good. And also
it's just about up front for them on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, so they have a lot of. They're one of my favorites. Even though we didn't include them in the list, that's another team that is going to be seen our favorite.
Right.
But moving on, but for my teams, say you took St. Paul's away from me.
Yeah,
but anyway, but there's a couple of teams I really like. One of those teams I really like is JFK. John F. Kennedy.
You've always been high on JFK, so yeah.
Oh yeah, no, he did. Jace has known that for a while. Like I've been telling Jace like the last couple of years, like JFK, they're building something over there, and that goes to show you the job that Coach Elpage has done. And I've mentioned this a lot of times before, but JFK when Linares Elpage took over as the head coach, they only had like 23, 24 players on the team. And they were able to make it to the second round of the playoffs, and then the next year they had a down year, and a lot of that had to do with the hurricane and stuff like that, and of course, which affected the New Orleans area quite a bit. In 2021, and then they really started playing football until about week 3, week 4 of the football season because of the hurricane. But then the last 2 years they've made it back-to-back quarterfinals. And really had a shot going to the semifinals, but they lost a great game to Shaw in the quarterfinals. It came down to the wire. But they bring back a lot of talent, and I really think that even though a lot of people know they're good, but I feel like they need to be talked a lot. They need to be talked about more.
There's a window open for them to make a state champion. There's a window open for them because of all the movement that's been happening. And with realignment, they can make a deep run this year. So
Also, got to mention that I'm glad you brought up Warren Easton because my little brother is going to be like really excited. My little brother Jackson is is a player over there, and he's going to do a lot of great things at Easton. And I also want to give a shout out to Coach Phillips, who's one of the top coaches in the state of Louisiana. And I think a lot of people are kind of not really looking at Easton the way they used to. Because we look at Easton as one of the top powers, but they lost quite a bit. But I think their coaching staff is going to get these boys right, and I agree with you.
It's a revenge for it, too, because of all that happened.
They're definitely a sleeper. Yeah, they're definitely a sleeper. But moving on to my schools, another school I want to mention is Central. I truly believe that they could win their district. And remember, their district has Catholic
Zachary.
and Zachary. But they took both those teams to the wire last year, and I'm really excited to see what
they
they
may.
do
Yeah,
this
you're
year.
right. They may have the edge right now when it comes to that district.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't think they're as talented as Catholic, but they 7-0 knows Catholic, all the Catholic players very well. They have a 3-year starter quarterback. I mean, they got experience. I mean, really, if you think about it, last year they should have made it to the semifinals. I know they got robbed a little bit. I mean, I'm not saying that it would have affected the game or not, but they're a team that I thought, because remember I told you this last year. It's like if they advanced in the second round, I thought they had a really great chance of beating Neville. And I didn't say they were going to outright beat Neville, but I said that they had a good chance to beat Neville, and they did beat Neville. They could have a run in their hands, and unfortunately, they had a very controversial call against touchdown that eventually turned the tide of that game, and they ended up losing by 1 point to touchdown. But they bring back a lot of players.
Was a weird, there were some weird playoff calls and.
Oh, because that was the same night that the Catholic John Curtis out of bounds fall. You also had a few bad calls in the Assumption Northwest game. There was a bad calls all night. It was a bad night for refereeing in that round of the playoffs.
It wasn't the best. It wasn't the best.
Right. But going back to Central, but you also have the Mays twins. There's a lot of great players coming back for the team. I really think that they have a hell of a shot to win that district this year. Of course, they already had the two powers of Zachary and Catholic, but I think they have a great shot of not only winning the district, but going to the state title game. They're kind of the team that, yes, they're a sleeper, but I can also consider them a state title contender given what they have, and the coaching staff that they have over there as well. But also Venable Catholic, Jalen Coleman. They bring back Jalen Coleman as a sports star for them. He's basically broken every single record they've had over there. Brian Wallace takes over the program. He was the special teams coordinator at Nichols last season.
Big shoes to fill. I mean, Tommy Minton was one of the best coaches out there, so it's not some big shoes to fill.
He was, but I'll say this, though. I mean, it's not the first time where a school in the River Parish has hired a coach from assistant coach from Nichols, and it's worked out for him. Remember, Lee Russell from Riverside, he was offensive line coach at Nichols.
Right.
So I mean, I think it can work out there. And they also have a lot of great players, as I mentioned, Jalen Coleman. But they have a lot of big offensive linemen as well that I could easily see some of those guys playing at the next level. And they got a lot of talent over there. It's just a matter of having the right things click at the right time for them to make a run. Because remember, they're also in Division II, I think they're Division II select, so they can have a run at their hands as well. Another team I want to mention is West Monroe, which may shock some people because it's West Monroe. Anytime you see the WM, you know exactly who that is. But the thing about West Monroe is that they really, especially maybe in Monroe, of course, in North Louisiana, that's a given. But down here, nobody really fears West Monroe like they used to, right?
With the Monties, with when Don Chow's really had it rolling.
Yeah, Don Chow's and of course Sherry Arledge kept it going. But I won't say they've been on some downtimes, because they've still been one of the best teams in the state. But last year they lost against North Shore in the first round, and then a lot of people think, West Monroe's beatable now. They're not the same West Monroe, but I think they have the pieces to make a state title run. They have one of the best offensive line, not only offensive lines but defensive lines in the state. They have a lot of sleepers on both sides of the ball on the line of scrimmage, and they have a lot of I think they're going to be very good once again. Of course, under head coach Kevin Davis, I think they have the rest. I think they have the talent to make a state title run, and the reason why I consider them the sleepers because I feel like nobody's really outside of North Louisiana. I think a lot of people are like, it's not the same West Monroe. Whatever, but I think they're a very good team still. And I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people down here that share that same sentiment, but I feel like it's not. West Monroe is bringing back this guy. West Monroe is bringing back that guy. It's not that. It's not like that anymore. But I think they're going to be a team that you need to watch out for. Mm-hmm. Another team that you need to watch out for. I feel like that a lot of people aren't really talking about. is Bell Chase. Bell
Yeah.
Chase, of course, was in Division One not select last year, and they had a huge victory over Parkway last year. They destroyed them by like 3 or 4 touchdowns in the first round before they ended up losing the second round. I believe it was to Russ. It was one of the better. I think it was like Zachary or Dusherham. Dusherham. They lost against Dusherham. But they burned back a lot of their starters, including the quarterback Amari Ambrose. They bring back the running back Dylan Carter. I mean, they're bringing back a lot of different players. And they, but I also like how they play football. They're a very physical team. They'll punch you in the mouth, and I think they're a huge sleeper in Division Two, not select.
Yeah.
And, I think instead them going down to division really helped that program out because they have the numbers of the Division One program, but and they also have the talent to compete for a state title. Stephen Myers has done a great job with the program, and I think they have the recipe to make a run for a state title. I really like I really like how they play. They're a very physical team, and I think they have a hell of a shot at competing for a state title.
Yeah, if you think about, sleeper teams, I feel like they're just a sleeper program because, Coach Myers, they play playoff games each and every year. They won a playoff game and maybe go to the second round, third round, but they've been consistent. So, there's just not a lot of people talk about it, but that's a really good choice. And, with them moving, that's going to help them because they've been competitive higher up. So it's going to really help them in the long run.
Yeah, most definitely. And also another team I want to mention because I felt like we should have mentioned earlier is St. Thomas More. If they were still in Division Two select, a lot of people are like, a lot of people they're back, baby, they're back. I think now they're going to Division One select.
That's really thinking about them as a sleeper.
Yeah, And I think St. Thomas More, of course, people are talking about them, but they're kind of like a betweener, kind of like a Central, where yes, there's also a good bit of people talking about them. But because they move into Division One select, you're like, oh, are they going to compete with Brother Mar? Teams like Brother Mar and Catholic and blah blah. Well, they beat Catholic and Brother Mar in back-to-back weeks, so I think they're going to be fine. They've always been a 5A program competing against 4A schools. I've always felt like that. But
I remember seeing 7-on-7 going to 7-on-7 tournaments. They had 100 guys on the sidelines for 7-on-7. I'm like, okay, this is 5A numbers. So. It's just inevitable. It had to happen. They had to move up, and they've shown they can compete and beat Catholic and play those teams and compete against them. So, it's not that they're gonna be on phase, so that they're used to it. Right. So, I feel they'll transition really well into Division One.
Yeah, and exactly. And also another player you need to watch out for is Brock Bergeron. He's taking over as quarterback. He's already getting some looks as a D1 quarterback. He's been rated as 3-star by Rivals, even though this will be his first year of being a starting quarterback at the varsity level. But he's a very good player. I've known about him for quite some time. I know his dad's very excited about what holds him this. Cole Bergeron. Yeah, sorry about that. Cole. Right, thanks. Right. Yeah, they know what I'm talking about. But Cole Bergeron, I've always known about Cole Bergeron for quite some time. My dad trained him. And my dad's like, Grant, I'm gonna tell you this right now. He's better than Walker Howard, and he's better than Sam Allman. I was like, Dad, he's a freshman. How can you make this prediction now? So Grant, I'm just letting you know he's gonna be better than both those guys. I'm like, Dad, come on, man. But you know what? I saw him in 7-7, and I'm like, oh my God, who is this kid? This guy's good. He was slinging the thing. Yeah, he was slinging that thing. And
they know a thing or two about quarterback play at St. Thomas More. So it's whoever's the next guy, you don't even question it. That he's going to throw for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. The offense ain't going to skip a beat. I feel like if it's like in John Curtis, you know how you get brought up to run the veer when you're a little kid. Yeah. You're growing up at St. Thomas More. If you're like a third, fourth family generation, you learn how to throw the football and go in the backyard and throwing. Yeah. So I feel like that's always been a thing at St. Thomas More. And they just know how to throw the football. No good quarterback play, and I mean, you can't go against Shane Savoie.
Yeah.
He did a great job.
Oh,
Coach
yeah.
Hightower did a great job. Coach Strother. They know how to throw the football.
Yeah, and the main man Hightower started it all. Don't forget about Coach Hightower now.
Well, I mentioned Coach Hightower. Yeah.
I'm so out of it right now. It's a long show, and then also we were also in the sun for like 5 hours. So we just lost all of our IQ points being the sun at LSU's practice.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, but St. Thomas was another one, and I also want to mention this too, because I forgot to mention this for St. Paul's before we move on to the next topic. But have you been seeing who they have on the offensive line? I mean, I've been seeing all their strength and conditioning videos. I've been quote tweeting them and everything. But they have a freshman by the name of Andrew Shofsall. Yeah, Andrew Shofsall. And he's only a freshman. I think, I believe he's going to be starting this year. If he's not starting, he's definitely going to be in that rotation of guys who could be playing. He's a 6'3", 300, and he looks the part, man. And hopefully, if he keeps growing, man, I think he's going to be a monster. But I also want to give a shout out to their old line coach, Michael Stant, who is a Brother Martin alum, played with my dad, and everything. And his younger brother, Pat Stant, also played with my dad as well as a tight end. They also played with both Brother Martin and Tulane together. But they're longtime family friends. But he's done a fantastic job with this group. Every time I see videos of them weightlifting, I'm like, okay, yeah, this offensive line's gonna be nasty, and that's he's a great offensive line coach, easily one of the best in the state. I just want to give a shout out to him for the job he's done with this offensive line. I think that's gonna be the huge key for St. Paul's this year. But moving on, let's talk about the Catholic League, Jace. I wanted to talk about the Catholic League because, for one, they're the most historic league in Louisiana.
It's the SEC West of Louisiana high school.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. They're a lot of tradition, a lot of great teams. But, this year, just talked to some people and also talked to a couple coaches as well, including Coach Bonice. And he mentioned that, and he literally told me this is like the Catholic League. A lot of people say the Catholic League is like the SEC. But he said I wouldn't even say that because in the SEC, there's always a gimme game. There's no gimme games in the Catholic League.
Yeah.
So, Jason, talk about what lies ahead of the Catholic League. Of course, we already talked about Edna Carr, and I believe you mentioned Warren Easton as well. Warren Easton, of course, is a new team, a new charter team of the Catholic League that we joined this year. This would be they played in the Catholic League for 2 seasons in the 60s. So this will be the first time in a little over 60 years that they'll be joining the Catholic League. But talk about what lies ahead of the Catholic League and just it's brutal. That's all I got.
So looking at it, the Catholic League, right now I'm thinking Edna Carr's the favorite. Like right now, just what we said about being one of the best teams out there in the state. But I feel like if you're talking about who the number 2 team is right now, just take your pick. Right now. It's Holy Cross. The season they had last year, a year ago, and what they're able to do as a number 1 seed and, be part of that Catholic League championship, bring that. This is going to be a huge year for Scott Watney and Holy Cross and see if that was a fluke or if they can continue to build on that what they did last year. So that's going to be big, and I think they're going to be one of those top contenders. Obviously, we can't count out John Curtis. The GOAT. JT Curtis and the Patriots. They're going to be right in the thick of things with the team that they have coming back. Look at Rummel. Rummel was at the semifinal game last year against Catholic. So they were just short of a state championship, and they got a lot of players that are coming back. The 2 biggest coaching moves in the offseason was Jess Curtis going to Southside, and there was, of course, Coach Robert Valdez going to St. Aug. So with him going to St. Aug, we always knew St. Aug was a very talented team, a talented program. It was just about putting all those ingredients together, and Coach Valdez is the perfect man for the job. When you have the one of the top players in the entire country and Jakeem Stewart on your team, that helps too. So they're going to play with anybody in that league, no matter what. Warren Easton, we always seen the great matchups with Endicott and Warren Easton, and I think that's really cool to bring that rivalry back in district back and having them join the Catholic League. I think it's going to give a little bit more of a competitive, like they don't need it anyway, but more of a competitive edge to it, more rivalry games. That's going to be really cool having that. Brother Martin, Brother Martin's always a team that overachieves a lot of times. A lot of teams, they kind of just sneak in and not a lot of people really talk about them, and they just go on these great runs. They went to the state championship just 2 years ago. Coach Bonice does a great job over there. And then Jesuit's not even a pushover. What Coach Manali did over there at De La Salle coming over here, they've been competitive. They've been on the short end of the stick with a lot of these games, but it's competitive, like you said. Like it's no cakewalk no matter what. I think right now Endicott is the favorite, but if you want to have a debate on who the second best team coming to the season behind them, it could just flip a coin. It could be anybody. And you never know. It might be one of these teams that end up winning it, but that's going to be like it always is. I think it's at its highest it's ever been because you add Warren Easton to it. You add, Coach Valdez with St. Aug to it. So I think Holy Cross with the recent success that they've had with Coach Watney, Rummel's always going to be in the mix. So it's going to be really big in the Catholic League this year, and it's going to be really fun to watch because it's like the NFL. It's no weeks off, and like you mentioned it, and no matter what, it's always going to be the top district in the state.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Of course, Endicott is the favorite, in my opinion. And it's probably the favorite for a lot of different people. And of course, they bring back a lot of people. And I think they're benefiting from the fact that a lot of teams in the Catholic League are still trying to figure it out. John Curtis, of course, they lost a good bit of their offense. They bring back a lot of key players from the defense, but offense, they lost basically their whole entire backfield. And I believe 3 of their 5 starting offensive linemen from last year. And of course, Michael Turner's. Yeah. So they're losing a lot of their best players on offense. But then also Russ. I think that's the team, in my opinion, that could be the second best team in the Catholic League is Rummel. The issue with Rummel the last couple of years is that they've been inconsistent. They've always been talented, right? Mm-hmm. They've had I know about some of the kids on their team because a lot of those kids actually played with my little brother on their travel team. A lot of those kids, I remember, they were, they were getting looked at by Rummel. Like Rummel ended up getting a lot of those guys. And I know all of them, like Fred Banks on the defensive line is very good. Jamard Jones, on the offensive line is very good. By the way, those are 2 players you need to invite to the All-American.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, anyway, but General Buggage is back at quarterback, and I believe they have a quarterback battle over there because I think there's another guy who was the starter. I think he got hurt for the rest of the year or whatever.
Buggage was the quarterback in the semifinal game I covered.
He was the quarterback, but I believe they were bringing back somebody else. Well, there's another quarterback they had coming back. But I think they're going to have kind of 2 quarterbacks. I may be wrong. I might be wrong about that, but I'll double check that in a second. But the thing about Rummel is that it's just a matter of consistency. Of course, last year they would beat U High, and that was a huge upset.
Yeah,
and then the very next week they lose to Shaw by 4 touchdowns. One week they'll beat John Curtis, and then the next week they go be blown out by Holy Cross. So it's a matter of consistency with them because they finished the regular season 4-6, and they ended up going on a huge run in the playoffs. So they've always been a very talented team. It's just a matter of can they stay consistent, and if they stay consistent, I think that they will. They have a hell of a shot to win the Catholic League, not just been second, but win the Catholic League. And of course, you can't forget about Brother Martin. The only issues with Brother Martin is that. Now their offensive line will end up even though they only bring back 1 starter and Caleb Smith, who's a nickel stick commit. The offensive line will be fine because Brother Martin goes through every year where they every couple of years where they lose a bunch of guys off the line, but they still end up being one of the best offensive lines in the state.
Coach Bonice would send me every year when I worked for Louisiana Football Magazine. He would send me 12 offensive linemen.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did that to me too. Yeah, because they were my most recent article for Crescent City Sports, And he sent me like 9 guys,
really
but that's just shows right.
Yeah.
But they do a great job of developing it because he believes in guys that should be like 3 or 4 year starters. So he wants to make sure they get like reps early and often. And so I have no issue with the offensive line because our offensive line, they're going to figure it out, and they also have one of the best offensive line coaches in the state with Coach Z. But the issue right now with them is the running back. I think they have to because right now they're having two of the returning running backs are coming off the ACL tears, and then also they need to find a third guy, which will probably be Jashawn Ware, who's their do everything defensive back.
Right.
He's also a running back as well, so they need to find. I feel like they need to find some explosion in the run game because it's hard for running backs to come off of ACL tears and have that same speed. So that'll be key. But they have one of the best receiver corps in the state with Easton Royal, who's one of the top young receivers in the state we have currently. He got an offer from Ole Miss recently. Then you also have Rex LeBlanc. You also have Brody Dumontier, and then you also have Rowan Lipscomb. And for many people who may not be familiar with the last name Lipscomb, he is the younger brother of Kalijah Lipscomb, who was the All-State receiver for Jesuit and ended up having a pretty good career at Vanderbilt. But guess who he's also related to? Speaking of Holy Cross, he's also the younger half brother of Kobe Young.
Okay. Yep. And Kobe's doing a lot of good things right now.
Yeah. Kobe Young, of course, was arguably the best player in the Catholic League last year. He was a huge reason why
Holy Cross had the season they did. Yeah.
Right. So I think the Brother Mars is another sleeper team that the Catholic League that could definitely have a shot to win the state title because they almost beat Carr last year. I think of all because obviously Curtis beat Carr last year at the end of the season after it was all said and done. The Carr was going to win the Catholic League, but they nearly beat Carr at the beginning of the year. And I remember I was seeing that interview with Coach Brown. He looked like he must have thought that they lost the game because that's how good Brother Martin played because they frustrated that Carr offense all game long. But I think Brother Martin's another team you need to watch out for. Jesuit is a very good team, but it's just hard to play in the Catholic League.
This year they play in.
It's like I told people this all the time. Like I think after Carr, you could easily see like 2 7-3 teams and 3 6-4 teams. Because that obviously that's probably not going to happen, but that's how deep the Catholic League is this year. Of course, St. August bringing in Robert Valdez, as you mentioned earlier, who's definitely a top-notch coach, and really he's like, in my opinion, probably the best coaching hire they've made in a really long and they needed a guy like that to come step in for that program because they always have had the talent, but it was just a matter of
potential there.
Getting it all together. Yeah.
Right. Putting all those ingredients together. And he's a perfect man to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And he's going to hold people accountable. He's all about discipline. He's also just like a great player developer. Look at some of the players he's developed, including Savion Jefferson at LSU. He's a great player developer. And, you talk to any of his former players, they'll always have great things to say about him. I've actually met him for the first time this spring, and I'm really loving what he's doing with our program as of now. And I think this year may not be the year where they have a let's just say they have a state championship type of like a Holy Cross last year. But I feel like they're a year away because it takes some time to create a culture over there because they definitely need to create a new culture. They've already had a culture, but they need to create a new one.
They're always just week to week basis. Okay, it's going week to week basis. This is not a team I want to play because
exactly right. Exactly.
It's going to be tough to beat them.
Oh yeah, definitely. Jesuit, like I mentioned earlier, they have some talented players, but it's just a very tough It's just a very tough league. Warren Easton, the same thing. Like Easton has some talented players as well, but the thing about this, tough league, very very tough league. Holy Cross is going to be the same thing. Now I say I have a lot of talent coming back, but I mean new quarterback, kind of like Catholic. They bring in a new quarterback. It's always hard to bring in a quarterback. It's always tough on the new quarterback coming in to replace a 3 or 4 year starter. So it'd be very interesting to see how that unfolds. But they have a lot of talent around them to make things a little bit easier. And who are we also missing? Because we're about Catholic. There's like 8 teams in Catholic League this year, so you might be forgetting one. Yeah, Carl. We already talked about Carl. Curtis. We already talked about. Yes, I think
Megan Martin. I think we covered everybody.
Yeah, we covered up the right guys, making sure. So yeah, So I mean, Jesuit. I think honestly they're a spoiler team. They can be a spoiler team, even though they may not have the. Not sure how they're going to end up the season, but they're one of those teams where they had just enough talent to be a spoiler team for any of these teams. And also they have a great coaching staff led by Benally, who has been to the highest, been to the state championship multiple times. So I think Jesuit definitely play spoiler this year, and they may shock a lot of people because I think they have enough talent to be that team where they can play the spoiler or they could be one of those teams that could be in the mix, right? It's kind of that's the thing about the Catholic League. You just don't know. You don't really. Unfortunately, you just don't know until you get to the playoffs because they may be 4 and 6, but because how tough
it
that
be very deceiving 4 and 6, and that's a lot of times. We're saying all in the past, just on talent alone. A lot of times they got John Curtis when John Curtis was really good, had a chance to beat them. So they can pretty much play up to anybody, and really anybody in that district can win on any given night. So that's what makes it so fun. That's what makes it the best district out there.
Yeah, and there's also some couple other districts I want to mention too.
Yeah.
And Jace will have some to mention as well because I want to talk about everybody because there's a lot of tough districts in the state, not just the Catholic League. But for me, what I picked it was 2-5A. That's the league when you with West Monroe. Well, West Monroe, Neville, Washtenaw Parish, Alexandria, Ruston, and then also Pineville. I mean,
Pineville's going to be a really good team this year. They might not be reflected on their record, but this year, like guys like Jacob Miranda, guys like that, they got some guys over there at Pineville. So that could be a good team.
The problem is that the Pineville is so big. Like really, if they were in a different district, they would be much better. It's just in a really tough. It's a extremely tough district. It's really, really tough.
Kind of like Jesuit in that sense.
Yeah, they're kind of exactly right. And I think they're, like you said, they're looking at some of the players they have. They're a very good team. It's just that they're just in a league with Alexandria, Neville,
Washington.
That's just a very tough league. And another league district I want to mention is 1-2A. And in 1-2A, you have Calvary, Darwin Woods, Homer, and Union Parish. That's a very tough district as well. Jace, you also have some districts you want to mention too. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, 1-5A, not getting too far from you. That's a tough district. You look, Airline, Benton, Bird, Captain Tree, Evangel, Houghton, Huntington, Natchitoches Central, Parkway. That is a tough district to go off of, and it's going to be brutal every week. We look at Captain Tree, Airline, and that's going to be a district that's going to score a lot of points. Like that's going to be you're going to 55-48. You're going to see 60 to 55. Like it's going to be like the Big 12. We talk about the Catholic League being the SEC. This is literally like the old Big 12 of Louisiana high school football. There's going to be a lot of high-scoring games, a lot of fun games, and it's going to be competitive that way. So obviously that's a really good one. Then when you look at staying in 5A, Acadiana, you got Karen Crow at 3-5A, Barb, Lafayette's been pretty good. Sam Houston had a good year last year. Southside, we talk about the other big coaching hire, Jess Curtis coming in at Southside. Sulphur's got an OSU commit at tight end over there at JD LaFleur. So 3-5A is going to be fun to watch this year too. So there's a lot of districts that are top heavy, like the three or four teams, and then maybe it kind of there's a gap between that. But one more I want to mention is 6-2A, and because there's just a lot of interesting storylines with this district, right? Because you have LCA and 6-2A, and then you have that whole LCA staff, pretty much with Coach Landry, Coach Trev Falk, all of them going to Lafayette Renaissance, building maybe another LCA over there. So that's going to be a lot of storylines with that, trying to build another one. And then you have Notre Dame, obviously the legend took, and Notre Dame in another year. And, they're always going to be right in for a state championship. Welsh has had a lot of really good years in the past. So that's going to be a really good district. I mean, obviously there's other really good districts out there. But, yeah, those are the ones as far as, like, just from top to bottom that are going to be really tough because there's other districts that are, like I said, there are 3 or 4 teams. It's really good, and then you have like a gap after that. But I was thinking from top to bottom, those are some top districts from top to bottom.
Oh yeah, definitely. And as I mentioned, also honorable mention. I want to mention District 2A, and in District 2A you'll have Delhi Charter, Faraday, Mangum,
Ooh,
Oak
yeah.
Grove, and Washington Christian. That's another tough league as well that
Mm-hmm.
may fall under the radar.
Yeah, Mangum's another sleeper team we haven't really mentioned for a state championship. So I mean every time Oak All-Star Christian get together, I mean you talk about really stealing the storylines in North Louisiana anytime those two teams get together.
Yeah, and our last, moving on to our last topic, I'm pretty sure everyone's thinking, thank God. Yeah,
Me and you included, I think, in that list.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, same here. But we're ready to take a nap because we've been tired all day. Of course, Jason didn't have to really drive that much, but I had to drive from Batters and back from us practice. So we're just getting ready to take a nap.
It was a full day.
Go home. Yeah, full day of football, but I love it. So glad to have those days back, despite us being tired. But our last topic is, some of the trends have been happening in high school football, especially among the players. So, what are some of the players to watch for this upcoming season, and also what position groups are you really high on this year?
So we have a bunch of our media day previews for Gridiron. So all the teams that showed up to our media days, we had one in Pineville, we had one in Them Springs, and then we had about 50, 60 teams there. So after that's done, I'm actually going to write an article spotlighting the running backs this year because I feel like that this year in Louisiana, the running back position is probably as good as I've ever seen it, since covering high school football in Louisiana. This is probably as good as I've ever seen it from really top to bottom. I mean, you look at the top, Harlem Berry, he's like the number 1 running back in the country. He's right here at St. Martin's Episcopal in New Orleans, and he's one of the top players in the country committed to LSU. You have another LSU commit that's also at the running back position. So it's not an excuse for really LSU to take 2 or 3 of these guys. But JT Lindsay, you mentioned him earlier. So you have him. You have a Texas commit and James Simon. Then you have other guys going down the list. You have, you have Jasper Parker, obviously the Michigan commit. You have Deshaun Ford. You have Xavier Ford, who at Leesville, I believe it's Michael Ford's cousin. And he's been really productive throughout his high school career. Nate Shepard from Mandeville, type of player he is. Jordan Hayes from Ruston. Rejon Zeno from Jennings.
That's another great name.
Yeah, he's a really good running back. And Jennings has had a lot of really good running backs. Calvin Smith. We have Chad Elsie. Elsie is a guy that if it was any other year, he'd probably be like the number 1 running back in the state. But this has just been a unique year for running backs. So, even go down this year. Reed Chauvin's a guy that for Episcopal, he's been a really good running back for them. I have to, of course, mention him. I probably get some calls if I didn't. But that's basically like the list. There's plenty more names I'm leaving off, but that just comes to show you just the running back depth this year. Now there are years like Leonard Fournette, number 1 player in the country, but I don't think we've seen the depth as much as the names at the running back position and how many Division I guys there are out there playing back this year in Louisiana.
Also, so for anybody who doesn't know this yet, of course, Jace works for Gridiron Football, but he also is the play-by-play announcer for Episcopal for BSN. So That's why you had to bring up Richo Van. I'm glad you also brought up Richo Van because that's another name that needs to be brought up a little bit more. But also another name you need to bring up too is Caden Ando from Holy Cross. Of course, obviously, he's the 1-2 punch along with Ryan Smith at Holy Cross. Ryan Smith, of course, one of the top running backs. He's 2026, but you also have to pay attention to Caden Ando.
Right. That proves my point. That just proves my point of how many great running backs there are in the state this year from the 2025 class. And there's others after that, but really good, really great class. I mean, as far as running backs are concerned.
Right, exactly. And there's a lot of young guys too, like Jaden Miles, who's not even going to be the starting running back for Catholic. But he's going to definitely be he's definitely going to be a huge part of the offense. But he's not the number one guy. He's
right.
It's just that, the first guy is also very good running back as well. So I mean, it's not like there's a lot of depth at the running back position for the class of 2025 in the state. And that's also something that I made me look into as well. Speaking of articles, I made you do an article on that.
Yeah.
That's I got a lot of stuff on my plate.
Yeah, that's a lot. I got to put all these.
Thanks for adding something to my plate. But anyway.
But
anyway. Oh yeah, definitely. But anyway, I also want to mention, especially trends. Since we're talking about trends and also players to watch it for. What I've noticed, in the past few years, and you know this because you've covered it for a while now, even longer than I have. But, we've seen a rise of quarterbacks come to the state of Louisiana, and usually it's just maybe one, maybe two, but now we have as many as 3 or 4. I mean, if you want to look at
the first class really seen that, Grant, was like when it first was coming along. That was when you had like Arch Manning. And when you had Ricky Collins, and you had, and that was just recently, Eli Holstein, Lunch, Dwayne Winfield, and that was just a couple of years ago. But it seemed like, to your point, it's been getting better and better at the quarterback position, and deeper at the quarterback position.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think some names I want to mention, too, for the class of 25, of course, you have Jax Bradley and Emil Picarella, who are fantastic quarterbacks. And there's a few other guys who are sleepers as well. But then going to the class of 2026, you have Cole Bergeron, as I mentioned before. He's a 3-star quarterback. Also, for class of 25, I want to mention Ben Taylor as well. I want to make sure I definitely add him there because I'm very high on the airline offense. The job that Coach Scotkin has done over there. But also, but that's another thing I want to mention for the class of 2025. Of course, class of 26, Cole Bergeron. And there's also a couple other quarterbacks in there as well. Probably haven't mentioned, but there's a lot of great quarterbacks in the class of 2026. But 2027 is almost a repeat of the class of 2023 with Arch Manning, Holstein, and Ricky Collins. Now you have Elijah Haven. You have Pops Houston, Evangel. You have the Ziegler kid from Benton. I mean, there's a lot of great quarterbacks.
A lot about him.
In the class of 2027, there's probably even more. Those are the names we know of for a fact. So there's a lot of great quarterbacks. Malachi Ziegler. So there's a lot of great quarterbacks in the stand. It's only going to grow, and also, the offensive line, that was a position that really Louisiana has never really. I wouldn't say they haven't produced, but you don't see as large numbers as in years past. You're starting to see
it's kind of like you produce 1 or 2, every now and then. Like an Andrew Whitworth or somebody like that comes along, and Will Campbell, a guy like that comes along every now and then. But to your point, that's pretty much the same.
Yeah, and also some other players you need to watch out for. All players you need to watch out for. Of course, I've already mentioned the airline passing attack with Ben Taylor, and then the receivers Kenny Darby and Jarvis Davis, who are 2 of the top receivers in the state. Of course, Kenny Darby is the class of 2026. And then Jarvis Davis is class of 2025. You also have Jace Thomas, who I also mentioned before. That's another player you need to watch out for from Distrehan. If you haven't already heard of him, you probably, if you're out, you've never heard of him. But I would go if you're in the area, in the New Orleans area. I would suggest you go watch Jace Thomas play. He is the son of former New Orleans Saint Fred Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
He's another fantastic player, and he's a big hitter too. So if you like big hits, he's your type of guy. And Aiden Andean, of course, is a big time player. This is only his second year of playing high school football, yet he's already one of the top cornerback prospects in the country for the class of 2025. Also, Dietrich Glassy, if you go watch him, he's a fantastic player. He's pops out for about 250 yards per game. And he's a great player. And I got a chance to see him for the first time against St. Martin's, and a lot of people were there to see Holland Berry.
Right,
but then
right.
we gave the Dietrich Glassy show.
Stole the show, actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he stole the show definitely. And Harlan Berry had a great game too.
Yeah, he did.
Glass's game was better, way better.
Right. Right.
And then also want to mention Treshawn Ware, of course, with Brother Martin. He plays. He's a starter on both sides, and he's also a fantastic DB, despite being undersized. And Coach Bonice has mentioned that he compares him a lot to Rod Teamer, based off of the mentality he has, and because he's clear he's the alpha dog. He makes it known that he's the alpha dog, and he's got a lot of confidence. And I've talked to him in the past at some of the sevens, and also despite him being a little bit undersized. I mean, if he was a few inches taller, this dude would be one of the top DBs in the state. It's just that he's just 5'9", and that's kind of and it's nothing he can control. But he's got an alpha dog mentality, and he's definitely a player you also need to watch out for in the New Orleans area. He can play cornerback, free safety, and strong safety. So they can put him anywhere on the field, and he'll do it, and he'll have a lot of success at doing it. Jace, you have any other players you want to mention?
There's a lot out there. I know you mentioned some really good ones. I mean, Diesel Solari is going to be one of the most fun guys to watch. I mean, he's a guy that's probably going to contend for like a player of the year type, even with us or Gridiron football. He'll be that type of player that contends for that because he's going to be getting a lot of player of the week type votes. And then some guys we mentioned already from earlier. I mean, the Bradford brothers, right? Catholic's got, I mean, the two brothers, obviously, congratulations to Jacob. I mean, he got an LSU offer the other day. Yeah. And Blaine, Blaine's one of the top players in the country, regardless of position, for 2026. So it's going to be fun seeing them play together. It's not often you get two brothers that high caliber to get to play with each other on one team. I mean, Keelan Moses, seeing him play and go around all over the football field for U High. I mean, one's just a guy that can play running back, can play linebacker. He kind of do it all. Jackson Bradley, a guy we talked about earlier. Luke Delafield, talking about another quarterback from North DeSoto. He's really good. So they got some players out there that are going to make a lot of noise this year. It's going to be really fun to watch a lot of these guys play. And it's going to be fun to see what other names that we haven't heard from before that come out and they emerge, because that happens where you got guys that you never heard about coming into the year and they just break out. But those are some of the names that we talked about. I mean, I know the running back position is going to be really big this year in Louisiana, but like you said, the quarterbacks are always going to be that's trending upward. The quarterback position with the names there. So yeah, I mean it's gonna be a fun season. The talent is always there. I mean, you look at 2026 and beyond. I mean, some of the top players in the country are from Louisiana in 2026. So I mean, we talk about Lamar Brown, we talk about Bradford, and we talk about at St. Aug, Jakeem Stewart. So yeah, I mean it seems like every year, man, it's just the talent. It doesn't run out in the booth. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing about the boot. I think Louisiana's in the top 5 for producing the most NFL players per capita, which is saying a lot given the population that's in this state. So that's that's the thing about say Louisiana. We're always going to produce players, no matter what year it is. It could be a slow year, it could be a down year for recruits, or it could be a very a big boom year. For recruits, but it doesn't really matter because it's always going to be talent in the state. But anyway, that's going to be the show for today, guys. We're going to have this show next week. we'll let you guys know. Probably either Monday or Thursday. You got to figure all that out. Once again, this is your host, Grant Chachere, of Rougarou Sports Media, which of course is where this video is. And also you can see the big Rougarou Sports Media in the back. But then also I'm working with Crescent City Sports now. So you make sure to look up all the articles over there at Crescent City Sports, which is run by Ken Trahan, of course. All of our high school football previews are up as well. So if you want to take a look at that, to get updated for what's going on in Louisiana high school football, whether it's in the New Orleans area, of course, but then also all across the state. Make sure you go to the website. I'll actually leave a link down there where you can find all the high school previews we've been doing since June. Jace, of course, is with Gridiron Football, and he's doing a bunch of previews as well, and a lot of other stuff too. I know he's a very busy man, so so that's a great thing that I was able to get him on a weekly basis to cover high school football across the state, because I know Andy's killing you over there, man.
Yeah, I'm used to it. I appreciate it. It's not like I don't really call it work each and every day when you're doing what you love.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I have to say. So it's really fun. We got a lot going on for more of things. And then, with LSU kicking up, getting some LSU coverage to y'all guys. And then obviously the media day previews. It was a pretty cool turnout, Grant. We had about, I think, 70 schools in a 2-day period. So it was pretty good. And we're going to grow it each and every year. Probably next year we'll probably take a week of it and go to like each corner of the state, just make it bigger at a time. So, but we had a good turnout for it, and then we're going to award everybody that showed up with a media day preview. And we're not stopping. We're actually say, hey, if there's any teams out there that want to come to our office, we'll knock out media day preview with them. So we're not closing it. So if any teams want to come to our office, we'll definitely write a preview on our guys. So it's gonna be busy. It's hectic as always, but we got a lot of content coming to y'all guys. So make sure to follow us. GridironFootballUSA.com is where our website, and then you can follow us on social media. And then obviously we'll have the bowl game. Every time we get a bowl game commit, we'll make sure to share that out on social media and our website. So again, some of those, the first wave of players, I think the deadline they commit in September. So we'll see which guys commit in September, and we'll definitely give y'all some updates on who's committed to the bowl game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, it's great to bring together. Obviously getting back together and creating a show once again, but then also bringing together and two people from two different publications that cover the state of Louisiana to its fullest, and that's always kind of a good thing.
That's right.
That's the thing. And I'll leave Crescent City Sports, their website down here, so you can check out all their stuff with the prep sports and LSU stuff. They cover a lot of great stuff over there.
Yeah.
It's not just LSU; they also cover UNL and Southeastern College like that. Of course, high school sports as well. And then also leave Gridiron Football's link down there, so you can look up their stuff. It's a lot. There's a lot of great stuff on both sides, so make sure you check it out. But anyway, once again, this is your host, Grant Chachere, along with my co-host, Jace Lejeune of Gridiron Football. We'll see you guys next week.